Hi guys, so I've got some good news and some bad news for you today. The good news is that this is the last of the research methods stuff, but the bad news is that I've been fired from the other job that I do, working at a calendar factory. All I did was take a day off. Now, enough of the bad jokes. The actual bad news is that today's task, or this week's task, is going to be I want you to write out in full an essay question or essay answer. Using all the different knowledge we've gained on research methods. We've looked at everything now. We've looked at all the different methods, all the kind of strengths and weaknesses and issues around it, all the kind of secondary considerations as well. So I'm expecting this to be a pretty strong essay. You'll obviously be doing it at home, which means that you'll be able to use your notes. So I will be really looking for very high quality, very well written pieces of work. Now we're going to do it where instead of submitting it on an email like we have been doing, we're going to start using Teams a lot more. And so I want you to submit this in response to the assignment that I set on Teams. So it's going to be done on Teams. There'll be the question there on Teams ready to go, and you can just complete it on the Word document, save it to your profile, and then I can grade it and give you feedback on the system. The only exception to that is going to be for people who type their essays up on a Apple device, so whether that's a phone or an iPad or a Mac. Those people who use Pages and not Microsoft Word, because I can't open that on my laptop, you're going to have to email that if that's your only option. Obviously, if you can use Word, that's a lot better, and then it makes things easier for me. If you can't use Word and you have to use Pages, send it as an email. Okay, but what I don't want this time is any photos, please. So if you handwrite and then take a photo of your stuff, unless that is your only option, please do it another way. And like I said, most of you, I'm expecting it to be done on Microsoft Word, in Teams, and submitted that way, because that keeps a nice track of everything, and we'll have all the information for you. So the question goes like this. Now, it's available on Teams, but if you don't have Teams, then you can email me and I'll email the document. It says, read item C below and answer the question that follows. Participant observations can allow insights into unresearched areas of society, for example, criminal life. Interpretivist sociologists favour participant observation as it allows researchers to see the world through the eyes of their participants. However, critics argue that participant observations are unreliable. Some sociologists believe the extra validity gained from covert participant observations to be extremely valuable, but critics find covert participant observations to be unethical. Applying material from item C and your knowledge, evaluate the advantages of using covert participant observation in sociological research. 20 marks. Okay, 20 mark essay on the advantages of covert participant observation. I'm going to talk you through a couple of pointers, a couple of things that, based on all the kind of work that you've done for me before, that it would be good to try and improve on to make this the strongest essay it can be, and then you're going to get it done. So, you're talking about a 20 mark essay, which means you've got an introduction, you've got 4 paragraphs as a kind of minimum, really. That's what you need to be aiming for, and then you've got a conclusion. Now, if you think about the question says evaluate the advantages of using covert participant observation. Now, that gives you very strong hints to what your introduction and your paras and your conclusion should be, as well as the item which you can use, and you can access that on Teams. The introduction should essentially be an introduction about the method. So what is covert participant observation? You might want to start with what is participant observation first, and then go into the difference between covert and overt. All right. Your 4 paragraphs are going to be, so the question's all about advantages. It says evaluate the advantages. So the main chunk of each paragraph, the AO1 chunk, which is assessing your knowledge, is looking for a strength. Okay, so ideally you're coming up with 4 different strengths as a minimum, that you could explain in detail, in as much detail as possible, and then criticize with a weakness. So the AO3 element, the evaluation and analysis element, really is going to come from the weaknesses of covert participant observation. All right. So 4 paragraphs. Now, what you want to do is think of what you think are the best 4 strengths to talk about, the ones you can go into the most depth about. Try and get a range as well. So you could do, practical, ethical, theoretical. You could do a paragraph on each of those, and then do a paragraph on positivism and interpretivism, what they would say about covert participant observation. Those could be your 4 paragraphs. Sometimes it doesn't work out like that. That's a pretty ideal essay plan if you can do that for whatever method happens to come up in the question. But if you can't, it might be that there's no practical strengths of a particular method. If that's not possible, then just try and get the 4 most relevant, most important strengths. And then, as I've said before several times, try and pair them up with the most relevant weakness or disadvantage. Okay? Try and get the ones that link together, that work well together when you're forming a discussion. And that's what you need to try to think about carefully when you're sitting down to write your essay. You look through your notes and you think, well, actually, that makes the most sense talking about this weakness after I've talked about this strength. Okay? And like I said, one of the paragraphs can be about positivism and interpretivism. Now, we did that in the last lesson, in the last task, and the paragraphs that have been coming through on the different research methods have been a lot better, and that can form the kind of main chunk of one of your paragraphs. Think about first, though, who's going to be in favour of covert participant observation and who's going to be against it, and then you can start with your AO1. The point is going to be who is in favour of it, and then the evaluation at the end is going to be who's against it. And the key with that, like with the paragraphs I got you to do for task 8, is to really try and fully explain why. Why are they in favour of it? Why are they against it? Okay, it's not just enough to say, well, it produces qualitative data. Okay, why is that good? Okay, well, it gets you more depth. Well, why is that good? Well, more depth means you get at the meaning of what people have in their heads. Well, why are they after that? Why is that good? Keep asking that question to yourself, why, and you will get a fuller explanation. And try and explain it all completely. Try and get to the absolute maximum amount of detail you can with these paragraphs. Positivism and interpretivism can definitely be one of your paragraphs, and then you want 3 others, which would be about the advantages or the strengths of covert participant observation, then directly compared or evaluated with the weaknesses that are most relevant for that method. Couple of other kind of just general points about when you're doing essays and you're writing about research methods in particular. Some people are saying that a particular method is valid or not valid. Now, you can't really think in terms of that black and white. You've got to think about a kind of spectrum or scale from not valid to completely valid. But most and vast majority of methods are going to be somewhere in the middle. They're not going to be at one end or the other. Okay, so you've got to think about it like that. So when you're talking about it, you need to be using phrases like more valid or less valid. Okay, so it's not completely valid and it's not completely invalid. It's that it's more valid, there is increased validity, or decreased validity, less valid. Okay, that's the kind of language you need to be using in these paragraphs. Obviously, you need to use the key terms: validity, representative, reliability, those kind of things. But talk about them in terms of more or less, rather than complete absolutes of one end of the scale or the other. The other thing that you really need to try and do is say what method you're comparing it to. So when you say, well, a strength of this means it's more valid. Because of this, the method is more valid. Well, more valid than what? A strength of this is it's more reliable. Okay, well, more reliable than what? More representative, same thing. It might be that interviews are more representative than observations, but they're not more representative than questionnaires. So when you're making that statement, you got to think about what you're comparing it to. And really, it needs to be the best kind of method to pair it up with, the thing that makes the most sense and relevance. Often, that's going to be the kind of flip side of the method. So it's structured or unstructured interviews, closed or open questionnaires, participant or non-participant observation, or covert versus overt observation, field versus lab experiments. Okay, you get the idea. Most of the time it's going to be compared to the other type of method. It might be that it's compared to something similar. So often when you're talking about interviews, you'd compare those to questionnaires, particularly structured interviews and questionnaires. So you've got to think about what's the best method to compare it to here that has the most sense and most relevance. All right, and that's something I'm going to be looking for when I mark your answers. That's it. That's my advice. This week then, this is the last video I'm going to send out for this week, and then we've got half term. The idea being you've still got task 10, which I gave you till the end of this week to complete. You've got until the end of this week to complete this task, this essay, which is task 9. I also then, what I want you to do is spend some time revising. Like I said, this is going to come up in your end of year assessment, one of these questions. So I want you to spend some time revising. When you get feedback from me on this question, go over it, try and internalize it, try and understand it, maybe try and make some changes, some amendments to improve it. Because you will be assessed on this, and that end of year assessment is important. It will matter. So you'll make use of your time. If you've finished off everything else, I want you revising. The other kind of goal I'm going for with this week is to get everyone to have finished off all of the research methods stuff. So if you've got some gaps in different places, I want you to spend some time going over the videos that I've sent out and the tasks that you've missed and getting those completed and getting some evidence to me. Ideally what I'd like is June the 1st, when we're going to move on to a new topic, I'd like everybody to have completed the research methods lessons and sent their evidence to me so I can tick it off. Apart from this task, and the last one, that's all via email, but this one we're looking for on Teams, and the last one it was optional. You could either do it by email or on Teams, so I don't mind with that last one. But I want that all really completed if possible. I know some of you've got lots of things going on and health things and family things that make it very difficult to work, or technical difficulties as well. So just do your best, but ideally I'd like everyone finished on June the 1st. Okay, I think that's it. Looking forward to seeing you all. It's still going to be a bit longer for me, unfortunately, as my previous email explained. Some of the other students will be back in college, and other classes will be back in college, potentially on June the 1st, if the government gives that green light. That's what we're building up to. But it'll be a bit longer for our classes, I'm afraid. But we're going to change slightly how we're going to do stuff as of June the 1st. For our classes online, and so just be aware of that and be ready for a slightly different way of working. Okay, I will see you soon.